You're listening to the Chain Clankers podcast with your hosts, Quentin Ferris and Horatio Gonzalez. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers. Welcome in, everyone, to the Chain Clankers Disc Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Quentin Ferris, joined here, as always, with Horatio Gonzalez. We got a fantastic episode for you guys today. Horatio, the 2021 World Disc Golf Championship just concluded, and we're discussing that today. We're going to be discussing advice for amateurs after watching this. I think there's a ton to take away from this, and I'm super excited to chop it up today.
Yeah, I am so excited for this episode. I've been talking to, that's like everything that has been on social media and everywhere. And this episode will be dropping Monday morning. So I guess if you haven't found out who won, or if you're still waiting to, like spoiler alert, I guess we're going to talk about it here.
You cannot spoil live sports.
Well, I mean, I know some people try to avoid it, so like they'll stay off social media, but I mean, that doesn't count podcasts. But if you haven't by Monday, then like respect to you. But I mean, you would have maybe already watched Joe Mess, but just in case, But hopefully by this point,
There's no way you don't know. I'm sorry. Also, I'm a big you can't spoil live sports kind of fella. So like that's tough. Just watch it because it'll be incredible. But yeah, so James Conrad took it down. I don't think anyone thought that was going to happen after like the third round with 2 rounds left. I don't think a whole lot of folk were maybe hitting those James Conrad bets, but nonetheless, he did pull it out. Watch the coverage if you haven't. We watched the final round, and there's a ton to take away from it. Paul Macbeth, he gave a great fight and just a terrible way for him to lose. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Katrina Allen clutching up, Paige Pierce blowing an opportunity to just take an absolute stranglehold on the FPO side. We're going to discuss that. And yeah, so I guess let's just kind of jump right in here, Horatio. What are some of your like big takeaways? Give me 3 takeaways from this weekend's World Championships.
Ooh, 3. Before we get too much into it, I would just like to ask the question, or kind of the thought of, I know we talked about it a little bit, but what makes this a Worlds? They say World Championship, and there was like 3 or 4 people that were not from United States, and 2 of them were Thomas Gilbert and Simon Lizotte, who pretty much live in the U.S., and 2 are full-time. But still, and I thought about it more, and, I think it's kind of the same way that, like, in baseball, be like, oh, the Royals are the world champions, or the Yankees are the world champions. I'm like, literally nobody else plays baseball, though. Like, there's other baseball leagues.
It's not that nobody else plays baseball. It's that nobody else is in the major leagues.
Right. But it's like they're world champions, but, like, are they really? Like, are they world champions when you're competing versus, like, only, like, teams in the United States? They have players from everywhere else, but still, like,
yeah,
I feel like it's a very loosely used term, like the Yankees being world champions when you don't play the rest of the world.
Yeah, we hate the Yankees, so
or
don't
the
really
Royals or whoever.
But yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Like on the FPO side, there is a single person that was not from the United States competing, and that is due in part to the COVID restrictions and whatever is going on with that. And on the male side, there was Thomas Gilbert, Simon, and I want to say there's someone else that normally tours, and then just someone who like I've never seen their name before. So, I mean, there was like at most 7 people who were not from the United States competing at this World Championship. So I can understand there's a little bit of an asterisk to it, but also like we discussed, like I don't think those players would have made the fattest of differences in the outcome, because I think that if you're playing professional disc golf, you're probably in America already on the pro tour. And so like, I don't think many of those guys and gals, the gals side is significantly better than the guys side in Europe right now, in my opinion. So maybe there would have been a little bit of a difference up at the top there. But yeah, I don't think at the end of the day, it would have changed the outcome of who won.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's just kind of like, it's not like, I think that if you win at the Olympics, in my eyes, that's more of a world champion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you have like the World Cup for FIFA and, there's a bracket and you take on, and the team that year that wins the World Cup, like that to me is a world champion. You literally played versus everybody that qualified from all over the world, and then you beat the best of the best, as opposed to like baseball or like disc golf. Like, you're beating everybody that showed up in like the United States. And I think even if COVID wasn't happening, I think it's probably still not that many people from other countries. So I don't know how they would do it differently, but I think maybe like if they took turns like where they hold the competition,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like how they do the European Open. Um, and then that way, like, because I think that's the other biggest pool of disc golf players. And then you would have to have, the ones that really feel like they can compete, they're having to go to Europe, or you do it somewhere that's neutral, maybe do like in Germany or somewhere. And
But I think also the problem with that is that the United States has the largest pool of available courses for a world championship style course, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
I'm sure you could find like some great, like in Europe, they have some beautiful
Yeah, I mean, I'm
courses.
not saying they don't have any, but I'm just saying it's easier for it to be here in the US than it is
Yeah.
to be in Europe. But yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. If you're watching on YouTube right now, comment down below. Do you consider this a world championship because there was a limited number of people outside of the United States at this tournament? Let us know over on Instagram or Twitter at Clankers. If you're enjoying the video so far, leave us a like rating. We definitely do appreciate that. But let's go ahead, Horatio. What were those three takeaways you had from this weekend's Worlds?
Biggest three takeaways, I guess, would be one, just kind of like and we'll go into a little bit more, but like the divisions and how they're set up. Two, I would say like the level of competition on the MPO. Like I have said it before, and I think we're living in the golden age of disc golf currently. And then three, I would say is the money involved.
Mm-hmm.
We had some drama with PDGA and money and stuff going around we'll get into, but I would say those would be my three biggest ones: the divisions, the competition and MPO, and then the money.
Yeah, I think mine, and I'll try to tie mine more towards the advice for amateurs, and we'll kind of unpack both of our takeaways here. So the biggest takeaways that I have is that, for amateurs, circle one putting is what's kind of the difference between you winning tournaments and finishing like 10th, right? Like if you can hit your circle one putts and maybe get a couple circle twos, like you're going to be doing pretty good. But on the pro side, you gotta be nailing those circle two putts. Like you just cannot afford to be that guy or gal who does not hit circle two. Like you have to be good in circle two in order to be competitive on the pro side. Another thing that I took away from this is that learning to throw putters is so critical, especially for woods golf. Like I know that we've said it before, and learning to throw putters is important, especially for those newer to the game. But like you have to have a good putter game in the woods in order to have success. Like you can't throw your Star Destroyer on every single hole in the woods. Like sometimes you have to throw a Luna or a Crown or a Warden or a P2 or whatever it is in order to make it work in the woods. Like you just have to learn to be able to do that. And then the other takeaway that I have is that you need to truly visualize what you want to happen and the line you want your disc to go on. You can't just go up and just randomly throw it. Like you have to pick a spot. You have to visualize how your disc is going to get there, and then you have to I'd like see it through. You know what I'm saying? Hold your follow through, watch it go through, those kinds of things. As well as a little bonus one kind of tied with that is you can't give up in disc golf. You just simply cannot quit. Like just because you're a couple of strokes back with a couple holes to play, don't give up. Don't ever give up. Who knows what could happen at the end? But those were kind of my biggest takeaways there. So I would like to talk a little bit more about yours first, Horatio. So kind of talk me through that first takeaway and kind of what your thoughts are. Go a little deeper with that.
Yeah. So divisions, I mean, we, this has been an issue. We were talking about it before the podcast, but divisions and AMs. So you have rec, you have intermediate, and you have advanced. And a lot of times, and what I see a lot of times, the issue is they are usually identical. Like they're off by a few strokes, but usually the winner, which it shouldn't be this way, but the winner in rec, intermediate, and advanced are usually off by a few strokes. And then the last players in rec obviously will be worse, but there's not that much of a difference. And I think if we look at the pro side, so this was Worlds, obviously, which is supposed to be the biggest tournament, of the year, but you have incredible players, like incredible players, and they're placing 50, they're placing 60. And these are like players that would take down C tiers, B tiers any day of the week, but they're at Worlds and they're not even getting close to winning because of that level of competition. And I think if you did the same thing for AMs, like it would make more sense because you wouldn't have people winning certain divisions that they're not supposed to. Does that kind of make sense?
Like, I mean, it makes more sense to me because we had this conversation before we started going. So, like, I'll kind of explain it in a different way. Pretty much what I'm understanding you saying is that the divisions, like, need to be, or I guess the best way to put it is that, like, it doesn't make sense why someone who wins in Rex shoots the same thing as the guy or gal who won in advance, or whoever got last in advance is somehow doing like significantly worse than middle of the pack rec or something like that. And like you can kind of see that on the FPO side also, because like there's a massive tier break of those competing versus those who are MPO players, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I mean, just look at like imagine if the pro side had divisions like that. Like you had PA3, PA2, and
Mm-hmm.
PA1, or I guess PO3, PO1, and PO2,
MPO1, MPO2, MPO3.
or whatever. Yeah, yeah. Like if you had it like the way that the AM side is set up, you would have had from this world, like if it was set up that way, you would have had guys that are really good players instead of placing 50th or placing 40th,
Mm-hmm.
they would have won their bracket.
But then also, like, are they really a pro? Like, like I don't know. Like, then it just brings in the question of like, what constitutes a pro?
And that's kind of what like I'm leading towards is that like this really shows you like the level of competition that there's in disc golf now. And I think the kind of the norm in the past was, you're really good, you're taking down your local league nights, you're taking down your local C tiers, like you're winning those. Okay, I'm going to go tour and I'm going to be competitive and I'm going to have a chance to make money. And I think that's no longer the case. I think there's a lot of players who are, sponsored players and they're really, really good players, but like this Worlds tournament showed it that like that level, like that's not going to cut it anymore.
Like, they have no chance of winning. You're touring. You are a professional pro player, but you have
Yeah,
no chance of winning.
yeah. And it sounds harsh, and I mean, but
But also, hold on, just like if it, like you just said, or if you're listening, you're like, wow, this is really harsh. Like these conversations need to happen. Otherwise, you don't have innovation, you don't have change, you don't have growth. It can't just be a collective group thing. So, like, yes, some things might be harsh to hear or say, but like sometimes it's necessary in order to fully think out an entire process and get better. Just a thought.
yeah, and like somebody listening is going to be like, oh, well, like, who the heck are you to be talking about who's good enough to play pro side? Like, you're just the AM, even playing for you, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get it. Like, trust me, like, I know, like, some of these players that I follow on Instagram, and I know, like, they're amazing players, and they're playing really good. Like, for them, like, it's the best they can play. Like, any day of the week, like, I know that they would beat me.
You're not making the argument that you or I are better than them. We are
No,
clearly not.
they are phenomenal players. Like
We
I'm
know our
saying,
spot.
yeah, like they are phenomenal players, like great, great disc golfers. But
But there's a difference between finishing in the top 20 on the pro tour and
yeah,
finishing 50th. There is a massive difference between that.
And so, but if you did divisions, like, what would be the point of that? Like, that wouldn't make sense, right?
I mean, I don't know. It's kind of your idea to begin with,
Yeah, but that's what I'm kind of arguing. It's like
but
if you did divisions,
I mean,
then
like,
they would feel better. Like they would still be competing, they would still be on
yeah.
tour, but they would have a possibility to play first instead of placing, towards the bottom or like in the middle and not cashing as much as they think they could. And so like why should the M side be different? Why do we need three
Mm,
different divisions?
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm seeing your full argument coming to side. Pretty much what you were saying earlier with like if we created a system where like MPO one, MPO two, MPO
Yeah.
three, like that's silly. Like why is there rec, advanced, intermediate? Like why like I mean like we were kind of talking, I think there should be like a like advanced rec novice. And novice should actually be used more for those people who just want to go out and have fun or are not people who are shooting +2 or better. Then like there's the novice division for you, and then you've got your rec for maybe you're getting closer to even +1 -1 around that ballpark, and then once you're pretty consistently shooting under par, you should be in advanced because like let's all remember like par is good. Par is not bad. Like it
Yeah.
literally is designed to be done in 3 shots. So if you're consistently shooting under par, you are you are an advanced disc golfer.
Yeah.
Like you are not a recreational disc golfer. You're an advanced disc golfer.
Yeah, like it shouldn't be based off of what you're consistently scoring because like every course is different and therefore it should be based off of like your your skill set and what you can bring.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, like one of the league nights that I do, it's you have pro side and M side, and they don't divide it up. Like if you're playing on the M side, there's an M bracket, and your score is based off of everyone that plays on the M side, and like the winner, it's easy. Like it makes a lot more sense. I don't understand like why you need to have three different divisions.
I mean, the basic argument is to make people feel better. And,
Yeah.
like we talked about a little bit before off camera, like to make people feel better and more people win. Which I mean, when we were talking earlier, I argued I think that's a good thing. Like more people will then go to tournaments, like that's good. But also, the flip side of that is, well, just get good, kid, get better, and you'll feel better about yourself. But also, then it'll be one of those things where I'm just thinking of this right now. If let's say you've got 100-person tournament, right? 20 of those are FPO, the other 80 are AM, and you finish like 20th, like that feels pretty good. Like, dang, I finished top 20 today out of 80
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
instead of being like, hey, I finished 5th in intermediate today.
Where
Go
there
me.
was 30 people. Yeah.
Yeah, when there was 10 people in the intermediate division.
Yeah.
Like I I don't know. Maybe you are onto something. I think that's good. I think we can have a full conversation about that another episode for sure. And maybe we can get some AMs to come on the podcast and talk about that with us as well. I think that might be a fun idea. Definitely let us know if you'd be interested in that. Horatio, let's unpack your second takeaway.
We touched on it a little bit, but there's a couple more things I'd like to say. I mean, there was, I would say 10 to 15 that legitimately, that if they showed up, they were in content for the world championship. And, I know everyone that is playing in pro, they're like, I'm competing in this because I want to be the best. But I feel like everybody knows that there's still that top tier elite group of guys who, if those 10, 15 people show up, you're not going to beat them. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's a lot of people there. How many people were playing in this world's championship?
2 seconds. 84 made it to the last round, and then it appears as though 209 were the complete MPO side, and then 70 for the FPO side. And the FPO side, they cut to 28.
Okay. So 209. And that's another thing I would say is I like the fact that, it's like, I mean, it's a single sport, obviously. So like anybody can do, they can create their own destiny kind of thing. But I would say on the last round, so there was 10, 15 people that I would say who legitimately like who I had in mind. They're like, okay, they could win this tournament. But then going into the final round on Saturday, there was at least, I would say, 6 to 7 people in the running that, like, depending on how their round went that day, they
Mm-hmm.
could win. It was, I mean, I might forget a couple of them, but it was Paul McBeth, Chris Dickerson, Kevin Jones, Calvin Heimberg,
Ricky, Nate,
James Conrad,
and Mason Ford was
Nate
really about it.
Sexton, Mason Ford. And, like, they all legitimately could have won. Like, they had a chance to win.
But like that was it.
Yeah.
No one else had, and also like half of those guys like would have needed a collapse from other people, and then them shoot the round of their life. Like there was legitimately probably 5 people who actually could have won. The 5 people who actually could have won this tournament was James, Paul, I'll say Nate, Chris, and Kevin.
Yeah. I mean, like on the final day, like
Yeah, yeah,
those
yeah, yeah,
guys
yeah.
could have won. Like Ricky was kind of out of it by the final day.
Yes, and I
Emerson
guess
Keith was out of
Calvin. So
it
I guess
by the
truly
final day.
six, truly
Yeah,
six could have won.
but that's still amazing. I think that's really good. Like the fact that like 6 were still in content, like that makes the
Mm-hmm.
sport a lot more attractive. Like
Yep.
there's actually 6 guys competing on this final day, and then I mean by the time you got to the back 9, it was more like 3. It was James Conrad, Paul McBeth, and Kevin Jones.
Chris
Maybe
Dickerson.
Chris
Chris Dickerson had a
Dickerson
lead on the back nine.
and Nate Sexton. They were still kind of it, but then by like the time we got around to like hole 14,
16.
15,
It was just 2 horse race at that point.
yep. And but I think that's amazing. Like that shows you like the level of competition that is in this sport now, and I feel like it's only going to continue to get better because you had people literally that like I would say didn't show up or didn't have like the ideal, the tournament wasn't really going for them. Like I feel like Ricky Wysocki, he didn't show up. If he would have brought his game that he's normally bringing, he would have been in that content on the final day.
Eagle
Um,
McMahon.
Eagle
He
McMahon
was
did not.
going in as the favorite to win.
Yeah, Simon Lazat, if he was, playing good and his injury was all done and dealt with, he's in that top. There was a lot that still didn't show up, and we still had 6 or 7 players that could have
Yeah.
taken it. I feel like that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on this a little bit, but like we are truly, as of right now, in the golden age of disc golf. Like we are at a point where it's you're not going to see someone win 12 world championships. Like no disrespect to those who played before us, absolutely no disrespect. But like you're not going to see a run like that, and you're not going to see a run like Paul had. Those runs are over. Like there it has gone from two people will win on the MPO side, like just depends on which one of them gets it, to like there's 10 names that can probably win any given weekend. And then you've got at least another 10 guys who like if everything goes their way, they can compete if not win. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. I also just think that like the level of competition is to a point now where I think and you and I talked about this the other night. I think Paul had to win this world championship because I think he is going to win 2 more. But now that he didn't win this one, I think you can put in your book that he will win 1 more world championship and he will end with 6 world championships. He will not get to 7. He will not get to 8. He will not get any higher than 6. And he should have already been 6 here, which would have allowed him to pick up 1 more. But the level of competition right now, I don't think Paul wins more than 1 world championship by the time he's done.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You look at Nate Sexton, who barely played, came back. I think he's 36 or 37. Came back and nearly took it. If he would have had a good final day, Nate Sexton would
Yeah,
have
his
won.
round 4, the end of his round 4, just the collapse.
And I mean, so Paul McBeth, he wasn't playing his greatest, but then, he is a fighter. He's probably one of like the most, like, that's why he's the GOAT. He
Mm-hmm.
jumped 9 places on the 4th day to be
Had the
on
hot
lead
round,
card.
shot like -10.
Yeah, to be on the lead card on the final day. So I think if he continues to play like that, he was still being content, but I mean, he wasn't dominating,
Hmm.
and it was still by only by a few strokes.
And
But
I'd
then,
like to call out a couple of names here, starting with Paul. The fact that like I don't know, like the thing that really stuck out to me was his miss on hole 3 on the final day. It was a little bit of a lengthy putt, but like it was a putt where like 3 years ago you knew Paul was absolutely knocking down. And I want it to be very clear. Everything we are saying right now is not a hey, this person sucks. It's just it's it's the way that we are seeing it as analysts of the sport,
yeah,
right? Paul should have made that putt, and if he did, no thought of 18 even comes into his head, right? James Conrad doesn't hit the shot of the century, um, but he misses that, and you could tell he was nervous. And like it's good to have nerves, and that's normal. And like if you're not nervous in the World Championship, then like why are you still playing disc golf? But like I don't know. To me, it was more of like a negative nervous energy this time than a normal positive nervous energy. Also, like Calvin and Eagle truly just disappointed me this weekend. Eagle was never in it, and then Calvin like was in it until the back 9 and
yeah,
just kind of fell apart. And like it just goes to show you that those guys can go out and dominate, but like on the big stage yet they're just not quite there. But give them another year or two and they'll probably be walking away with a couple of world championships themselves, which is just like and like it's also going to become a thing. And I'm pretty sure Philo said this in the booth, like if you're not somebody who's playing disc golf as a child and like being good as a child, like you have no chance at winning a world championship. Virtually no chance. Like he literally said, you have no chance. Best of luck to you. Go out and try. But like, unless you are a disc golf, I'm not going to say prodigy, but unless you're the disc golf kid, like you're probably not winning a world championship. You can compete, but you're
yeah.
probably not winning it.
Which before that was the case. Before, you could pick it up,
I mean,
at
Paul didn't pick it up till he was what,
high
like
school.
high school? So
Yeah.
like, eh, yeah, just goes to show you the difference.
Because like Kyle Klein, I mean, he placed, I want to say, in the top 20, and
Um,
he's
I'll look it up while you're talking.
like 16 or 17.
No, Kyle Klein like definitely just graduated high school.
Yeah.
So he's like 18, 19. He finished 8th.
Yeah, eighth. And so he's like super young. And like you're seeing a lot of these like really young players who are competing at Worlds.
I mean,
But the other
I'm pretty sure Eagle is like 22, maybe
23.
23, and
Yeah.
he finished 8th as well. Kevin Jones is a young guy and he finished 4th. Calvin's still really young, finishing 11th. Thomas is super young at 13th. Emerson at 14th. Ezra at 15. Like Adam Hammis at 17. Like the list goes on and on.
Which I guess that's about the age that Paul started to dominate at, was his early 20s.
Yeah,
I mean, but another thing I was gonna, yeah, because I definitely also had Calvin. I mean, it's so hard to not root for all these guys.
it
Like,
really is. It really is.
and like I want like Paul Macbeth to win just because it's Paul Macbeth, and like it's awesome to see him like just dominate. But I had like I'm probably a huge fan of Calvin. Like if I'm a fan of more of one player more than any other one, it's Calvin. And yeah, his background kind of, I think mental, I think he still has to get some stuff in order with his
He's
mindset.
just missing putts.
But if Calvin, I promise to you, if Calvin can figure that out, his mindset, Calvin will be the one dominating tournaments for like the next 5 years.
Calvin and Eagle have the highest probability to be to have that Paul or Ricky level domination on the sport over the
There are
next 10 years.
there are tournaments where like Calvin cannot miss a putt.
I mean, and also literally if you I mean, unfortunately the streak broke this tournament, but like going back, Calvin had finished in the top 5 like the last 15 tournaments. Like that's really hard to do. Like that was the longest streak ever of someone doing that.
Yeah, and he just makes it look so easy. Like he's
Yeah.
always like his shots are just like dialed, like he is consistently like dangerous. And if he can figure out, like get this experience is gonna help him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Horatio, let's unpack your third takeaway.
The third one. So we talked about money. And I've said this before, and I don't have a PDGA fee or PDGA membership yet, and I don't know when I will get one or if I'm going to get one because I literally just don't see any benefit of having one. I will just pay that extra $10 fee at tournaments whenever I do play tournaments because I don't play tournaments too often. I play the local ones that I'm a fan of, just because I get to play with other people, the locals that I see around at league nights and stuff. Or if there's cool ones, I want to go to some in the future, some of the bigger ones, and play. Um, but we saw that drama with Brody Smith and the money and him paying out of his pocket to rent out that driving range. And so, like, where was the money from all these memberships? I think they're always bragging about how many people have memberships, what number they're up to. And a membership is what, like $40, $50 for a year?
Something like that. I think it's 50 or 60. I'll look it up real quick while you keep going.
Yeah. And so, like, where is all that money going? And like they pay people to when they do tournaments, I guess, and they have a nice website, but I just don't see why that money isn't going back towards players or to improve tournaments like we saw this weekend.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. It is $50. I wonder if the professional one. Oh, the professional one is $75, and a junior is 30. Um, Interesting. But like talking about that further, I mean, I'll talk about the Brody Smith part first. Also, like the head of the PDGA like came out and said like Brody Smith was a jerk for doing that, and like 1000% like the nicest way I can put it, like I'm not gonna curse, but I would love to right now in response to that, because like you are so outside minded. Like I understand that the PDGA and a lot of that money goes more towards the AM side, and that's great, fantastic. But like when you are the ones who are running the world championship, the US women's championship, the US championship, like when you're running majors, it is unacceptable that there is not a proper place for players to warm up. And also, it is unacceptable that literally the night before the first round, tee times are not out yet and pairings are not out yet. It was like 8 o'clock the night before, and then tee times and pairings came out. Are you kidding me? For C tiers, I've had my pairing out days in advance. Like, what are you doing? Like, what is the PDGA actually doing? Like, I don't know, man. And Horatio, a couple weeks ago, when you first were talking about, I'm not getting a PDGA membership. I don't know where the money's going to. At first, I was like, this might not be good. Like, maybe we shouldn't talk about that. Maybe I should cut that out. But I was like, the more that I think about it, nah, these are the questions that need to be asked. We are not going to be a podcast or a brand that just sits back and allows things to happen the way they are. We are always going to challenge. There's no reason not to. And this is a prime example. Why am I paying $50 a year to then watch the pros at the World Championship have to have Brody Smith rent out the driving net?
Yeah.
You're kidding me. You're kidding me. You couldn't fork up $1,000 for the World Championship so the pros could have a proper place to warm up their drives? You're kidding me. Absolutely kidding me. I don't care what their excuse is. If Brody Smith could do it, they could have done it as well. And this brings me to my next point of the like board of directors or whatever. I can't remember exactly what they're called for the PDGA. There is voting going on right now for who the next board of directors are going to be, who's in control of it. Absolutely go check it out and read what those people are about. Watch their YouTube videos about what they want to do. And, at the end of the day, we can only complain. We can't complain if we don't go out and vote for somebody else, if we don't try to make some change like that. And so I would argue, go check it out, and hopefully there's some folk who agree with what you think, and you can vote for them, and hopefully they'll pick it up.
Yeah. And I mean, another thing is, and I will say it, and some people might not like it, but if you want to see changes, or especially everyone complaining about it, and even on the pro side, which it's a little harder for them, but if you truly want to see changes and you want to see PDGA take action, do not renew your membership. And I would tell this to every single person that has one. If everybody did not renew their membership and ask for changes, a better organization setup, for better, a better product for what you're getting, I promise you that they would get their heads together and improve uh, tournaments, improve payouts, improve everything. Because I mean, without PDGA memberships, like they would have nothing. It's a nonprofit.
Yeah. That is very bold. Very, very bold. But I mean, the number one way to always impact someone or impact something is to mess with their money. And if you mess with their money, they're gonna wake up and they're gonna realize. And having a PDGA membership is not the end all be all. It's not like you're not a disc golfer if you don't have a PDGA membership. Like you're just harder to track at that point. So yeah, I don't feel it's necessary to have one. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe in the future some changes happen. We'll get it, because also we'll save it for another episode. But like the rating system is completely broke, and like the only real reason to have a PDJ membership
This
is
is
for the
rating.
ratings.
Yeah.
So like I don't know. I don't know, man. But yeah, we can save that for another episode. While we're on the topic of payouts, I want to do this real quick before I kind of talk about my takeaways. Is the payouts for this world championship, man. So we'll start with MPO. James Conrad took the thing down and got $16,500. That, at least the last couple years, is the highest that has ever been. But also, like, the Pro Tour Championship last year was like a 20 grand payout, if I'm correct. Like, why is the World Championship less of a payout than the Pro Tour Championship? That makes absolutely zero sense. Well, actually, I guess it does make sense, because you're paying people who finished 50th and worse, when the Pro Tour Championship, you only have the top 32 people there. I don't know, just a thought I had. But if you literally do the math, because 84 people cashed on the MPO side, 84 people cashed. The last cash was $440, and they finished with a +3. You should not, and no tea, no shade, I'm not going to call the person out. Like, it's not their fault. But you should not finish +3 at the World Championship and make money. I'm sorry. That should not happen. Over 5 rounds, you should not finish +3 and make some coin off of this. And I did the math, ladies and gentlemen, from 50th all the way to 84th. If you sum all that dollar amount up, that is $15,000, 600 is 15,605. That's how much money could have gone to either the FPO side and increase that, or B, it could have gone to the top 5, top 10 guys. Like why are the guys and gals who finished so poorly still cashing? Like I get it to a degree, but like the world champion should like get like 30 grand. 50 grand, whatever it is. They should not 16,500. Like that's great, but like literally don't pay out 50 to 84, whatever what they did, and give 10 more grand to James Conrad. Now he's at 26 grand, and give another 5 grand to Paul, and he's at 15. Bing, bang, and boom. There you go. It's worth so much more. Like the pay structure is completely broke in my eyes. And then if you look at the FPO, Katrina Allen, who took it down, which incredible how she took it down. I'll let Horatio talk about that here in a sec. But she won 10 grand. Why is she not getting 1,600? Like, why is she not making what James Conrad got? Why is Paige Pierce at 6 grand? Those kinds of things. And they cashed out up to, let's see here, 28. So a +22 was last cash in FPO. I don't know. It just seems like, I get it. You want to get more people paid, but like, I don't think this is the smart way to go about payouts.
No, the first one I'll say is, you said 84th was the last one to get paid out.
Yep.
And what'd you say it was, like $400?
Yeah, 440.
And so, in my mind, like we were talking about earlier, if you're competing at the World Championships, it's because you believe that you have a chance to be world champion, to take that down. You are there, like you have to travel, you have to sign up, you have to do all this stuff, practice. You are there because you think you can win. And if you're okay taking money in the 84th, 85th position or whatever, then I feel like you truly don't believe that the world champion has earned what they did, if that makes sense. Like people should be okay with only the top 20 cashing because then you're like, that's who's good enough. And then the world champion gets more. Because if it was you winning, I mean, you would want the ad cash. Like, why are people cashing that low, like you said? And then also, like, it's not fair because there was only what, like 90 women in the FPO side?
Let me check. 70. There were 70.
70, and then that cashed.
No, yeah, there were 70 that total played, and then 28 of them cashed.
And so, like, how is that even fair? They're taking all that extra money on the MPO side so they can pay out 84 total people, where there's not going to be that many women on the women's side division. They can't pay that many women if there's not that many women in the tournament.
Yeah,
So why would you not take more money so you can pay the top winners of equally instead of paying the guys at the bottom of the
yeah.
MPO side?
And like I get top 50, okay, I get that. Top 45, top 40, okay, yeah, sure. Like those guys deserve the cash, but like even you could change it to the point of like here, even if you finish 21st, you're only making $990. So like the difference between 21st and 84th is like $500. Like what? You finished 60 spots higher than someone. Why are you only getting $500 more than them? Like to me that's just silly. Like only those in the top 17 got over $1,000. Like I don't know, man. Like we could go on and on about this, but
And
I think payouts is broke.
and I think not just that, but like one thing that it would help if they fix this thing with payouts is it will legitimize the sport more. Because
Yes.
a lot of people still see it. It was on Sports Center and people were like, cool. And the announcers, like, they're not used to it. And even the way that they're announced, like, yeah, the world championship, like, of golf of disc or something. Like,
Mhm.
to them, it's still just this like
It's
weird
funny.
sport.
Like
It's,
like literally James Conrad's it's on our Instagram story. You probably won't be able to see it by the time you're listening to this, but the SC top 10, the number 1 was James Conrad's incredible field ace that put him in the playoff, and you could just tell the announcer wasn't serious. Like
yeah,
it was a joke to him.
yeah.
Like it clearly was a joke.
And if you fix the payout, where like world championship, for example, and they only cash the top 20, 25, and you have all of that extra money and you're able to give it to the first and second place. And then you have James Conner, the world champion, because that's the title that they are marketing, world champion. You have him win 30, $35,000,
Yep.
$40,000. Then people are like, oh, wow, this is a serious sport. They are playing for serious money and this is legitimate. As opposed to, oh, he won world championship, cool, $16,000, which like that's a lot of money, for the players. But like in pro sports, that's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to be fixed about it, and we could go on and on, but let's talk a little bit more advice for the AM side. This is kind of the things that I was talking about, but before we get there, I just want to recap kind of how both of the world championships ended for FPO and MPO. So, Horatio, could you explain to everyone kind of how the FPO side ended?
Yeah, so very similar actually to the MPO side, They were we knew there would be kind of a battle of, Katrina Allen and Paige Pierce. And Lisa was right there, but kind of towards the third, fourth round, they started getting away from those two. Haley King was also there. I thought Haley King would be able to also be in that top three. And I think once she figures out her game, she will be in that with those other two, Katrina Allen, Pitchford, consistently. And she usually is. But this tournament, it turned out to be, just Katrina Allen and Paige Fierce battle rematch number whatever, probably like 20 something. But basically, 18th hole, Paige Pierce pretty much thought she had it. And so she laid up for the save shot. She was like, I'm leading. I kind of just need to get my par and I'll be good. Katrina Allen literally, like she's been doing for years, fought and said, like, I am totally capable of winning this, and I'm not going to give up. I'm going to give myself the opportunity, put myself in content for winning. And so Katrina Allen did not quit and put herself in the position to where she forced Paige Pierce to now make a putt for, I believe the putt was to go to playoffs, but she missed it. And then so Katrina Allen won. But it was pretty much very similar situation as Paul laying up because he felt he had it in the bag.
Yeah, and so when you go to the other side, so pretty much what happens is going into 18, it's a one-stroke advantage for Paul McBeth. He has a pretty bad drive, in my opinion. Like, it literally was one more disc rotation away from going out of bounds. So, like, not the best drive in the world, but then James has an even worse drive. And then James has a terrible upshot. And so now James is 247 feet out from the pin going for birdie. And
At that
like
point, he was pretty much done.
at that point, it was over.
Yeah.
Literally, the Nate Doss curse had happened to Paul McBeth. Nate Doss, Philo, all of them. The commentators' curse happened to Paul McBeth because they literally were talking about how this one's in the bag, number six, number six, number six, and then all of a sudden James has that awful drive. It's the worst drive of the group. Like, it was also probably about 6 feet away from going out of bounds, like into the water that's like short. Like no one else, like everyone else was like easily 100 feet up from where he was. Like, it was a terrible drive. And then you get after his upshot that really only went out maybe another 100 feet, if that. Literally, Nate Doss was like, oh, this is it, it's over, man. Number 6, Paul McBeth, he can lay up, game over. And then James Conrad is 247 out and has to get it to tie McBeth. McBeth has already thrown, has laid up, so his chance at birdie is gone. And so now you've got James, who visualizes his line and throws literally the greatest shot of disc golf history ever. There has never been a shot that has been better than what James Conrad did. Literally, you can find it all over the internet right now. If you have not seen it, go look it up, because it is the greatest shot of all time because of what it meant. And he hit it. And my favorite part about the whole thing was the genuine happiness that James Conrad had. Like, like, I almost started crying because I was so happy for him, because like you could tell how much that meant to him and just how like overjoyed he was. Like, I don't know, it made me feel emotional because of how happy he was. And so he hits it. Literally every single person there except for Paul and Hannah McBeth are stoked right now, elated. Calvin,
Paul laughed. Paul like
yeah,
smiled at him.
yeah.
He was like, "That's insane. Like nobody makes that shot. Like that's not a shot you can
That's
make
not a shot
again."
you even practice. But like even Calvin gave a nice little yell. Like, never
Yeah.
seen that much emotion out of that guy. Like, everyone except for Paul and Hannah were like, "Wow, this is like," and they were probably also like, "Wow," but they were like, "Ah, this really stinks." So anyways, gets they go to a playoff. They go back to 16, which James had already aced, almost aced, and then parked twice. And so this time, what's he do again? Park job, no problem. He James threw just a little floaty hyzer with a putter, and no big deal because it's a pretty downhill shot. I can't remember the exact distance right now. And then Paul goes with a forehand. The forehand hits and then rolls out of bounds, virtually end. I mean, it did end any chance. And at that point, it was like, oh, well, James just has to make this 10-foot tap in to win the world championship. And of course he did. And my favorite part about it was the first thing out of James Conrad's mouth. The very first thing out of his mouth was that he said he loved playing with his card mates. And he had a great time playing with Paul, Kevin, and Calvin. Like, he didn't say anything about the shot. He didn't say anything about, the first thing he said was, I had a really good time playing with these guys today. And if you also just like, my favorite part about James Conrad is that as they're getting ready to step up to this make or break playoff hole, he says, "Good luck, Paul." Very audibly, he says, "Good luck." Like, who? Like, sure, everyone's like, "Ah, yeah, good luck," but like, he genuinely meant it. Like, and no thought came into my head of, "I was just saying that." Like, he actually meant it. And like, even go back to the beginning when they were announcing everyone, when they said Paul Macbeth first, he was like, "Yeah, go Paul." Like he like is just such a nice guy and supportive of everyone. I cannot express how happy I am that he picked this up. And also, it's just so funny to me that you go back to the All-Star event and how James was kind of letting Paul down in the little doubles that they were doing, and like Paul was visibly frustrated at what was going on. For James to then beat him here, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of poetic justice. I thought that was pretty funny. But that was a long rant that I had about that. But one more thing that I have before I'll let Horatio jump in before we kind of get into my takeaways, is that on 17, Philo in the booth said that one of these guys are going to have to throw the shot of the century, or the shot of their career, I think is how he put it. And James Conrad did that on the next hole. Like, I don't know. I thought just, wow, so crazy how that happened. Literally so crazy. But I'll stop talking, Horatio. As we kind of get into my takeaways here, the first one I had was circle one putting wins for AMs, but circle two putting is what really locks it in for pros. And I believe that, you have to have a circle two game that is consistent and you can trust it and you can make it in order to compete at that level. But like, what advice do you have for AMs watching this? How do you make sure that circle one putting is on lock for you to even think about circle two putting?
With that, I would disagree with you a little bit. I would say that circle one, like 100% from circle one, if you finish with that stat, you're winning the tournament on the MPO side. And for sure, like some from circle two are going to help you and are going to give you those extra strokes off your card. But circle two, I think even for the pro side, they're not making every circle two. Like circle two putts are huge. And as an AM, if you're making everything from circle one, you should be playing pro. Like those circle one putts, like that's up to 30, even if we do just 20 feet to 30 feet, like just on the outer edge of circle one, if you're making all of those, you're probably playing pro side. I think that circle two are not gimmies on the pro side, but they're going to set you apart, I would say.
Yeah. Like, of course, you're not expected to make every circle two putt, but the difference between being a winner and someone who just plays MPO is the circle two putting, in my opinion. Like, I mean, we can
Yeah.
count how many step putts, jump putts, whatever you want to call it, that James Conrad had that secured him the dub because he got the birdie from there. So yeah, I think that's really important, is working on those circle one, circle two putting. Like putting, like, yes, your form, your driving, all of that stuff matters, but like, it doesn't matter if you're 20 feet out and you can't make that shot. It's going to be tough for you to find success in the sport. So I think that's really important. And I think that's my first like big piece of advice to take away from this world championship, is that, really hone in that circle one, start thinking about circle two.
From
But yeah, go ahead.
from like all sorts of situations. Like we watched that back nine of at the fort,
Mm-hmm.
yesterday was so entertaining because like Kevin Jones was making like some sick putts. Paul Macbeth, you said he missed that one on hole three, but on back nine, like some of the putts that Paul Macbeth was
Oh
making,
yeah.
it was like
Crazy.
OG McBeast. Like
I
that is
mean,
the Paul
both
Macbeth we love to
Paul
see.
and Conrad were like 6 down, 7 down over the last 9 holes or something like that.
Yeah. And it was not just your standard like open, I'm standing in front of the basket. It was putts like over like branches,
Yep.
underneath a branch.
Yep.
Like you can practice, those putts, those circle one putts all you want, just you in an empty basket, but you have to be able to make them from a knee, make them,
Mm-hmm.
from a straddle,
Elevated
and your
baskets. Yeah.
your scores will improve.
Yep. You gotta make. You can't just be in an open field. making putts. Same thing for your throwing. You can't just do field work in an open field all the time because you're not going to be able to shape shots as well as you'd like if there's not a literal obstacle that's going to plop it down. So the second piece of advice that I have here for AMs is that learning to throw putters is super key. Like I know we say it, I know our guests say it, but like when the Jomez coverage comes out, or you can watch the final round of the DGN on YouTube as well. Like, notice how many times Conrad has a putter in his hand. Like, to have success in the woods, you have to be able to throw a putter. You have to, do certain shots with a putter that you just cannot do with your distance driver, your fairway driver. And so I really think that learning to throw a putter, finding a putter that fits in your hand well, and learning to throw it, learning to shape shots with that is super, super critical. And that can really help you with your speed control, your angles, landing zones, all of those things. I think that's really crucial.
Yeah, definitely. I know I've seen, lately I've started playing with more putters and mids just because I want to get my form down and increase my distance. And that's people, like you said, people say all the time. And I feel like people don't want to believe it. They're like, no, I'm too good for that. But if you go play with pros, your locals and stuff, you'll see them throwing much slower discs than some of the AMs.
Yep.
And that's for a reason. Like, it's true. Even, buddies I've gone to play with, I'll be like, they want to go out and buy new discs or whatever, and they want it to go far. And I'm like, well, you could, do a mid, it'll help you out a lot. And they'll be like, no, I want a driver. Like, I want a distance driver because I want to be able to throw far. I'm like, well, that's not necessarily like all it takes. And
Yeah. It's not like
unfortunately,
ball golf where you have a driver and it's going to go farther than a wedge.
yeah, yeah, similar. Yeah, golf. I'm like, we've been playing a little bit here, but I don't know what most of them do. But I'm like, I'll pick up the driver, and they'll tell me like, oh, you don't want to use that here. It's
Too
too much
short.
for the hole.
Yeah.
But I'm like, nah, I want it to go far, and so I
Yeah.
do it anyway. But that's
Yeah.
just lack of skill.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So the third and final takeaway I have here is that never quit. You simply cannot quit. And you have to visualize your lines and that, the disc is going to go in. Like, visualization, positive attitude, not quitting, like those things are so crucial. At one point in the final round, James was down like 4 strokes to Paul and won. Like, you have to, if you give up in that scenario, it's game over, game set match. Like, he does it, like the greatest shot of all time doesn't ever happen. Like, and that shot also doesn't happen without you visualizing your lines. James Conrad is so good at watching him visualize the lines. He literally shows you what he wants the disc to do every single throw. So maybe incorporating that a little bit, or telling yourself, hey, I want to pick the third tree to the right and I want it to be just under the leaves. That's where I want this disc to go. Like, finding your targets, visualizing your lines are so important to executing your shots. If you just step up and throw, you're not going to hit. You might not be hitting what you're aiming for. And also, how do you even know what you're aiming for? How can you get better? How can you tell the discs are doing good things if you don't have an aiming spot, if you're not visualizing what you want the disc to do? Like, I think it's just, it hurts your ability to get better and to improve your score. So yeah, I think that's super, super important.
Yeah, I think those are the little things, that separate, going to make you a better player and just like an average, average rec player. Those are the things that matter and you should focus on. And we're very lucky to get to watch the quality of disc golf, that was on Worlds. Like, some of that, like, it's just insane. And if you watch the next day coverage on Joe Mass, like, those are high level players. And just like hearing how amazed they are by like some of the shots that these guys throw, like, it lets you know, like, how incredible disc golf like we're currently living in.
Yeah. Well, Horatio, let's get out of here on this final quick little topic here. We've said this before, at least to each other. I don't know if we've said it on the podcast yet or not, but like, in racing, especially NASCAR is, I think, a good example here in America. Like, if a Toyota wins on a Sunday, typically there's more Toyota sales on a Monday, right? Ford, Chevy, whatever it is. You don't bag any MVP discs. I don't bag any MVP discs. We just got one sent to us that we're going to be doing a review of. Does James Conrad winning with MVP. And this is something he said. He said the last 2 years he feels as though he should have won the world championship. So maybe them Innova discs aren't as good as everyone claims them to be. Maybe MVP is being slept on. Maybe James Conrad's just really good and he put it all together, right? But like, are you looking to purchase any MVP discs after James Conrad's massive W?
No, I'm not really that kind of fan or that kind of person, just to go buy because somebody won. But I think it definitely will have an effect. I think MVP will see a up in sales this next following weeks. I know some of the people were like endorsing or throwing the NB out there and saying, hey, just saying this is pretty much what he was using. So I think definitely you'll see people go buy some, give it a chance. Next time they go to the store, disc golf store, play it again or whatever, they'll take a second look and they'll be like, maybe I should give this a shot. So I think for sure, but no, I'm not like that. What about you?
I probably won't. I don't know. Like, I'd have to. I want to see how this crave works for us, and maybe if it goes well and I like the plastic, then maybe I might pick up another one here or there. But I've never really, I've never thrown an MVP disc before. And like James Conrad has been like the biggest MVP signing in a long time, and like has been one of the only guys or gals who really finishes consistently towards the top. So I don't know. I'm not saying that impacts my decision, but also there's just not near as much MVP around here in the middle of Kansas. Maybe there is in other areas, but yeah, here in Kansas, there's not a whole lot of MVP. But I don't think I will be purchasing any MVP. I think I'm pretty set with what I got.
There's so many like discs that you can buy between all of the companies, and then you take mids, fairways, distance drivers into consideration. There's like so many options. And I think that's one thing that hurts people and maybe doesn't help them improve as fast as they could because they're constantly changing discs. And to where like I want to control the number of things that I am learning and focusing on. That's why I've kind of just picked one brand. I throw mostly Discraft and Discmania, but it's probably 90% Discraft. And that's solely because I like their plastic. They put out nice looking discs, and I just want to focus on learning that plastic and that brand. I don't want to confuse myself with, throwing Innova, throwing MVP, throwing DGA or whatever. Like, it's going to take me a lot longer to learn the discs. So that's just me.
We got to get this guy Horatio a Discraft sponsorship. That's what we got to do. Well, guys, hey, this was a fun episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let us know what your thoughts were. Let us know what were your reactions to this 2021 World Championship. Did you watch the shot live? I'd love to know. Yeah, let us know. I would really would be interested to hear what your guys' thoughts were. Got some great content coming up for you guys here in the next couple of weeks. Can't wait to drop it. But Horatio, if you don't have anything else, I think we'll see y'all next week.
We'll see you guys. Have a good week.
Thank you for listening to the Chain Clankers podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us from so you never miss another episode.